right, we have a little smaller brush. I'm working with a number 4. These sizes do vary by manufacturer, but in this brand, we got a number 4. So I'm gonna go in and kind of start to brighten up certain spots that I feel need it. And I'm going to take care of the white. We're gonna work on her eyes a little bit, and because they're kind of bright, get the whites of the eyes and fill in some of these gaps that I left over here, which I shouldn't have. So there we just gave her an eyelid, which was kind of nice. Let's do the same thing on the opposite side. So as we work here, I'm not sure if I covered this, but I know that I mentioned that I'm using a disposable palette. And I don't know if I mentioned what kind of palette that I use at home. So at home I have very large Jack Richardson easels and a tabaret. And my palette that I use at home is actually a glass tabletop. And it just happens to be the tabletop that I ate on every day as a kid, because when my parents finally decided to let that table go, I took it, and the underside of it is actually painted gray, the same shade of gray that I like to use to tone my palette, and it's very large, big round table. So that saves me a little bit of time, because when I'm at home, there's no cleaning the palette, there's no changing paper. I could just rotate it to another spot that's a little cleaner and keep on moving. One other reason why it's good to work in this method when you work from light to dark is it just so happens that when you're working on an area, the colors that you're using tend to be related. So all I'll have to do to get from this color to the color that I need for this part of the year is add a little red. It's like I don't have to stop, mix a completely different color. So, you know, as much as it might look a little regimented in the beginning, when you get used to it, you realize that it's actually very freeing and it's very efficient. And if you guys notice, I keep stepping back so I can see the whole thing, kind of take it all in. Now I'm noticing that up in this area, it's a little brighter than what I have down there. So again, because I'm working in this way, I already have that color somewhere on my palette. All I have to do is find it, maybe add a little white to it, maybe a little green in case it ends up too strong, and we'll just put this down. Now Alicia's hair has moved a little bit because it wasn't tucked behind her ear before, but what I do like is I like that I can see a little bit more of what's going on here in the forehead. So while I'm not going to move all the work that I've done in the ear, I'm going to add some of these highlights that we have here. And I don't know if you guys notice, I can put them right in because we are working dark to light. You can just kind of put them in. That highlight that I just put in is really strong, so we're going to soften it a little bit. All right, about to the point. Maybe we need to give her an eyebrow on that side, a little bit of an eyebrow. Again, the model's going to move, even the best model. And so you have a choice. You can insist that the model move back, or sometimes what you get is a little bit nicer than what you had in the first place. And I think that that is what's happening here, just a little nicer. All right, now we're moving on to our smaller brush. And I'll probably go in and put a little bit more of the color in the hair, give her a little background, and kind of get the shape of the top of her head right. Use the background and trim that up. I'm seeing underneath her nose, there's like a little highlight. It's not very big, so let's get that correct. And we're going to trim just a little bit over here. We're going to leave a little bit more of a stroke on the nose so that we can see where it ends. Maybe here. So now we get to put in smaller details. So there's a little light highlight up here. That's not it. Let's try it again. I think that's a little better. So now we're going to see about the whites of her eyes. And before we even do that, let's get the color in her eyes. It's a little, I guess, hazel. It looks different in this eye than it does in that eye. So what I'm going to try to do is get it in maybe a couple strokes. We have this dark area here, and we're going to add light to it. On this side of this pupil, I really can't see kind of what's going on the opposite side, and it looks like, they're kind of melding together, that side of the pupil and the eyes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it like I see it. As an artist, you are not, especially when you are like a realist, if that's what you want to call this. I tell my students all the time, you are not responsible for that which you cannot see. So, maybe if later I feel like, oh, it needs a little something, because, we're not exactly bound to real life. We're not cameras. There are cameras out there and they do a darn good job, so I don't like to exactly copy what's in front of me. But I also know that if I can't see it, I don't necessarily have to draw it. And that's part of the beauty of a portrait, is that you get to you know, you get to lose edges and make choices. And that's certainly one of my favorite things about painting is making choices. I see a little bit of blue, you know, close to here in her eye and on her eyelid, so I'm gonna pop it in. And we're gonna kind of build the white of this eye the same way we did everything else. So on this side, there's a little bit of red that I see. So I'm gonna pop that in. Unfortunately, I keep losing her mascara, so we'll put that into... I would like it if I could just keep it there, to be quite honest with you. That's nice. Now we're going to start working on the white of this eye, which is very different from the other one. It is kind of a bluish gray to me. So, you know, we call it the whites of the eyes, but it is not white. If you made it bright white, it would look crazy. So we don't do that. That's a lot of color in it. It's reflecting the color from her skin. It's reflecting the color from her clothes. So, you know, when you get to this part of your painting, you know, take your time. Looks a little bright. I'm going to use this opportunity to take some of the paint that I have on the canvas and kind of trim her face a little bit. Because I have it too big and through here it comes closer to her eye. We have to fix that now. Now let's give her a nostril. Now I started with, as far as the whites of her eyes, I started on this side because that's the darker side of the whites of her eyes. So now I have that color and I can adjust it and make it apply to this side. But I didn't get that blue in there the way I wanted to. There we go. A little bright, right? So we have to do something about that. So I think what I'm going to do is make sure that the pupil is dark enough on that side. Because I think it is more brown than black, and I really need it to get closer to black. So we're going to try to reestablish that real quick. And this color wants to fight me, so we are going to continue to work on it. All right, we are getting there. Now sometimes I poke my hand out and I rest my wrist on this because I don't paint with a maul, that stick, you know, you see in paintings that artists use to kind of steady their hand. All right, so I think this is a good point to kind of stop. We'll take, probably this will be the last break, and we'll come back in and do little finishing cuts.